been a long week for me. Gonna need my notes today. Today we have a kind of a forgettable gospel story. Jesus talks to a guy. That guy gets a new insight to life and faith, and then everyone else gets upset with him. This seems to happen a lot with Jesus. But then again, there are things that make this story special and thought-provoking. And the thing that caught my attention here, most of all, was the importance of the moment to Zacchaeus. And it reminded me of other stories with that same emphasis. So I imagine that most of you know of Les Miserables from the movies or the musical, but I have a hunch very few of you have actually read the book. It's one of my favorites. And by that I mean it's tied with one other book for my favorite book of all time. I'll remind you, really quick summary of the first part of the book. The main character, Jean Valjean, he spends 20 years in prison for stealing a loaf of bread. He gets released, and he has no clue about how to get his life back on track because he spent his entire adulthood in prison. He spends the night in a church, and the bishop is super nice to him. But in the night, he steals all the silverware and runs away because he's desperate and confused. The cops arrest him because Jean Valjean is a really bad criminal. They bring him back, and the bishop says that the silverware was a gift, and therefore he hadn't committed a crime. So he makes the cops let him go. He makes the cops release him. And then he gives Valjean 2 silver candlesticks in addition to the stuff he stole from the house. That's the part of the story most people know. The next scene in the book is not in any of the movies. Valjean is walking along somewhere dumbfounded about what just happened. And because he's not paying attention, he bumps into a 10-year-old boy, a chimney sweep, who had just gotten paid for the week. It was 1 coin, but it would feed his family for a week. So imagine it's a $20 bill coin. So they bump into each other. The boy drops the coin. And Valjean absently steps on the coin. So the boy can't pick it up. So the boy realizes what's happened. He beats on Valjean and says, you got my coin, give me my coin back. And Valjean doesn't realize or care what's going on because he's just dazed and confused about what had happened, and he just shoos the boy away. The boy tries again, but Valjean's a big guy. 10-year-old can't do anything about that. So the boy runs away, presumably to get help. And then when Valjean is alone, he lifts his shoe, sees the coin, and then kind of pieces together what had just happened. Because again, he wasn't really paying attention before. And he's struck. Holding that coin, he's struck by the morality of the situation. He was just shown superhuman kindness by this bishop, and the very next thing he does is steal a 10-year-old's hard-earned money. And he almost hears an angel say to him that it's time to make a choice, a real choice. And this is the part of the story that fascinates me because it's absolutely true. Neither demons nor angels can ever force us to be good or evil. Never. They can never decide for us, ever. Real decisions are never made for us. If we're not in control of ourselves, none of it counts. It's like sleepwalking. Anything you do when you're sleeping, you're not really responsible for. Angels can never make us do something, even if it's a good thing. However, they can force us to make a decision. The heralds of God can place us in situations where we either do the right thing or not. And that's what Valjean realized. For his whole life, he wasn't good, but he wasn't evil either. He was this murky, lukewarm, middle ground kind of thing, but no more. Holding on to that little coin, he knew he had to fix this mistake and be good, or he would forever be a monster with a man's face. He could no longer stay in the middle. He could no longer be neutral. And Zacchaeus had that kind of moment when Jesus walked up to him that day. You might say that Jesus was the coin for Zacchaeus. It was a moment unlike any other. Jesus said, "Come down, I need to stay at your place." Jesus needed him for something and called out to him. Now, let me be clear. Zacchaeus was not forced to follow Jesus or even take him seriously. Because if you recall, in other parts of the Bible, people do the exact opposite of what Jesus asks them to do. So Zacchaeus certainly had a choice, and he makes the right call. Sitting in that tree, he listened to Jesus and received him with joy. So that's like welcoming a close friend. It's like Zacchaeus went from stranger to best friend in a single moment. And from there, to be perfectly frank, the rest of the story is an epilogue. It's just tying up loose ends. He promises to give half his wealth to the poor and this and that. All those things are just expressions of Zacchaeus' realization that Jesus is the Son of God, that he's so much more than anybody could ever know. That realization was his moment of truth, and from there, nothing would remain the same. So let me close with one last point, my last page. It's a truth that's buried inside these earlier points of Valjean and angels and Jesus and all of that. It's an answer to a riddle, almost. What's the difference between a good person and a bad person? It's simple. A good person is the one who hasn't given up. That's it. Think about it. If being good means making good choices, whether in word or deed, and if we've always got free will on our own actions, then salvation is never out of our grasp. Not a single one of us will ever find themselves at a point in life where they are truly doomed, because we're never too gone for God's mercy. Our salvation is one good decision away, or one breath of air carrying the words, "I am sorry," to where those words need to be. Doing that will not make our troubles go away, and it won't make our lives easier, but it will keep that connection to God alive and present. And if you know someone who really has given up, if someone who really does believe that they're too sinful to change their ways, well, it's up to you to snap them out of it. That is what the good bishop did for Jean Valjean in Les Mis. And that job of jump-starting faith is one that we all share.